Hey guys, today I'll be comparing the best JRPGs on PS2 according to the general consensus versus my own personal favorites. Get ready, cause my own list is completely different this time. So let's begin. The first on the list is Persona 3. I did see either version of this masterpiece on several lists. Remember that I build the consensus based on different websites and online magazines, not YouTube. I'm happy Persona 3 was on so many lists, rarely on the first places, but still, it's a win. I say this because I think it's a game that a lot of people have been trashing over the years, enough to make an awful impact on its reputation. They seem to forget how revolutionary it was and how influential, but to each their own, right? Well, it'll surprise you to know that this is the only game I have in common with the general consensus. From here on, my favorites are totally different. In fact, I'd rank Persona 3 higher on my list, but the consensus didn't seem to favor it that much. My number 10? It has been changing over the years, and you can see that in my best PS2 JRPGs videos. I've gone from Growlanser 3 to Shadow Hearts 1 and 2 to Xenosaga 3 and finally to Radiata Stories. Simply because Radiata is the one I've played the most out of those. So it was about time I admitted I like it more, even though I think the others are slightly better games. Radiata is such an underrated gem, but it'll surprise you to know that I did see it in a few lists online, which made me happy. But Persona 3 is the better game here, I'll admit that. I can't wait for its remake next year. Number 9, Shadow Hearts Covenant. Many years ago, this would have been impossible. Games like Tales of the Abyss or even the first Kingdom Hearts were more popular than this sequel. The first game was barely on anyone's list, but Covenant featured in a lot. That's awesome, because it's such an incredible follow-up, and in terms of gameplay, it's better than its masterful predecessor. As I mentioned before, for a time both games were on my personal top 10, so it's hard for me to disagree on this. I think the internet made it popular by realizing how original, balanced, and memorable it is. However, nowadays I rank Radiata Stories higher, like I said a minute ago, and my number 9 is always changing. My numbers from 9 to 6 are usually kinda in random order, so today I'm sticking with my beloved Eternal Poison, a grid-based strategy RPG set in a dark fantasy world with a gothic style. The game didn't make it to any lists whatsoever out there, sadly, and I do believe as much as I love it for its uniqueness and its mature storytelling, I think Covenant can offer a similar level of darkness and originality. I'm sticking to my guns with Eternal Poison, but I'll have to admit Covenant is a more appealing game. Number 8, Shin Megami Tensei 3. Of course, Nocturne had to make it to the list. I wasn't surprised. The first mainline SMT game to be localized to a mild commercial success, but a huge influence in the genre. Today, it's one of the most well-respected RPGs in history. I never beat the original version. I stayed resentful until its modern remaster helped me become a big fan. But we're not ranking here the remaster. A lot of lists have this game on them, but nearly none of number 1. So yeah, sure, it's a fantastic RPG and all that jazz, and I do respect it a lot. My pick for number 8, however, is Odin Sphere, an ultra beautiful 2D action RPG that I did see miraculously in a few lists online. However, Nocturne appeared on more, but just like Odin, not in the first places. I've been a die-hard fan of Odin for a long time and have been praising it ever since, but I've also been dissing its relentless difficulty. As a matter of fact, I've done the same with Nocturne. What a coincidence. Well, with both games I prefer the remasters. If I were to compare the vanilla PS2 versions of both, I think Nocturne could be the winner because its importance is bigger and it just has way more respect out there. But we can't deny both were very influential in the genre during their time, but if I were to compare its remasters, I'd stick to my guns with Odin Sphere as the better game, even though both included some quality of life improvements, though I feel Leaf Thrasier just gave the players more. Number 7, Xenosaga Episode 1. Xenosaga Episode 1 was no surprise. It appeared on so many lists that I felt overwhelmed. I'm a big Xenosaga fan, but I don't think this game should be here. It's great, it's a fantastic follow-up to Master Xenogears, and it is definitely a must-play JRPG. However, I just wouldn't include it in the top 10, but that's just my opinion. I understand that it was a AAA game published by Namco now that Tetsuya Takahashi had left Squaresoft. It was meant to compete in the market, but Volume 1 only craved the path for its 2 sequels. Xenosaga 2 got a mixed reception, but then 3 came along when nobody cared about the trilogy anymore. A tragedy considering 3 is, in my opinion, by far the best game here. Well, Xenosaga 1 is great and all, but my pick is Tales of Legendia. Yeah, one of the black sheep in the Tales family. I believe it's gotten more love over the years, but I think it's because others like Cesteria and Symphonia 2 took many beatings in its place. Legendia is such a memorable game, with beautiful music and gorgeous visuals, apart from its highly emotional story. It may not have the best gameplay among the series, but story and characters are what won me over here. Sorry, but I do believe Legendia, no matter how unpopular it may be, is the better game here for me, no doubt about it. Number 6, Dark Cloud 2. This one was a shocker. I know it's popular and beloved out there, but I always saw it as some kind of cult classic more than anything. I have no idea why so many magazines and websites had it on their lists. I even saw it a few times on number 1. Wow! I mean, just like with Xenosaga, it is a great game, but it's just not what you will usually see in a top 10. The consensus really surprised me here, man. No, you don't need to play the first one to understand this. In fact, its real name is Dark Chronicle, precisely to differentiate it from its predecessor. There's so much to do in this game, so many gameplay mechanics, that it's hard to know where to start explaining. But I've covered this game a few times before in other videos, like this one for example. Good game, but I have to go with Persona 3 right here, and I do absolutely believe it's by far a much better game, although that's just based on my own personal taste. We saw Persona 3 earlier in this video, so there's not much to say about it anymore. Plus, it's more popular, more influential, more important, yeah, you get the idea. Dark Cloud 2 is a solid and interesting pick for many, but I think most will agree Persona 3 is just better, even with part of its reputation in shambles nowadays. Alright, next is Final Fantasy XII. Alright, here come the really big ones, the Square Enix titles. This is what makes me lose faith in the consensus. It just seems to be a popularity contest instead of an honest list, but we saw some crazy examples before, right? However, Final Fantasy XII was indeed in a lot, and I mean a lot of lists, mainly from people that have barely touched the PS2 RPG surface. Nevertheless, I can't complain much, since this game is fantastic, I loved it. It was long as hell and quite challenging, but it was such an enjoyable experience I'll never forget. But it's just not in my top 10 or dare I say top 20 favorite JRPGs on PS2. I think the Dot Hack GU trilogy, which is one game cut into 3 parts, is far superior. I was heartbroken to see such a popular saga barely included in top 10s. I don't know if YouTubers put it on theirs, but magazines and websites ignored it. I remember back in the day this popular trilogy was up there with the big ones, competing for the first places, but nowadays not even its remaster saved it from being long forgotten. Final Fantasy XII is a big contender for top 10s, I get it, but this trilogy is just a much better game for me. It's my video, so the loser here is Vaughn and his gang. Not sorry. Number 4, Kingdom Hearts 2. I'll be honest, I thought for sure the first Kingdom Hearts would make it, but I only saw it on a few lists here and there. Its sequel, though subjectively justified, appeared on tons. I agree it's a great game, but it's the only Kingdom Hearts title I've ever finished and enjoyed. I'm not a fan of the series, and I don't think I'll ever beat this entry again. Once was enough to notice I probably wouldn't become a diehard like millions out there, so my number 4 being part of my favorite JRPG series of all time is definitely the better game for me, Suikoden 3. Believe it or not, it did feature in plenty lists, but most were top 15s or top 20s and it didn't make it past number 10. Some did have it in the first places though, which surprised me. Because Suikoden 3 is similar to Persona 3. I think the internet hasn't been kind to it over the years, and it's now developed a dubious reputation. I think it's due to the fact that it didn't age very well, that its battle mechanics were kinda convoluted, and that it's quite the challenging game, unbalanced even. Despite its flaws, I love it to death. I think it has a fantastic story and cast of characters with 4 different main protagonists, which was daring for its time. I love Suikoden 3 more than Kingdom Hearts 2, but the latter is probably the more appealing game for most audiences. It's hard to say for me personally which one is truly the better JRPG in general terms. Number 3, Dragon Quest VIII. Dragon Quest VIII is a stupidly long game, not as long as 7, but still a big grind fest. Beautifully developed by Level 5, the guys behind Dark Cloud 2 and Rogue Galaxy. Galaxy was featured in a lot of lists, by the way, so take it as an honorable mention. This entry in the popular series is a really good game, but I always felt it just goes on and on and on. Its difficulty and lack of save points in dungeons I consider outdated, but it's still a must play, among the best of the best Dragon Quest games ever made. It's no wonder it made it so high on so many lists online. But Suikoden 5, my personal 3rd place, is better. It's a shame Konami didn't promote it or print more copies, else it wouldn't be so freaking rare and expensive nowadays. I wish more people could have experienced this masterpiece so as to decide if it was worthy of the Suikoden title or not, since original creators didn't work on it. Surprisingly, this is my favorite game in the whole series, and one I've beaten numerous times. It is that good, and I'm glad some people featured it in their lists. I was honestly staggered, but in the popularity contest this seems to be, it just cannot compete against the giant that is Dragon Quest VIII. I love that game, but my point has been made clear. Suikoden 5 aged well in all areas, maybe not in random encounters, but in everything else. It's just far more enjoyable for me to play. Number 2, Persona 4. Yeah, so this game was gonna be very high and you knew it. People prefer the golden version on Vita, later on PC and now on PS4 and Switch. Which version you prefer isn't relevant, since the PS2 original release is the one that started it all. It's stupidly popular and featured in almost every single list out there, very often among the first places, several times on the first one. Me? I think it's a great game and yet another must-play JRPG on the list. Sadly, perhaps you already know this isn't even in my top 10 or top 15, maybe top 20. But the point is, I'm not as die-hard as many of you. My pick then, however, is weird, to say the least. It's a game I've been recommending like an obsessed fanboy over the years, and no one, absolutely no one else I saw had it on their list. Growlanser Heritage of War, also known as Growlanser 5, a hybrid RPG that combines action and strategy with excellent combat, storytelling, character arts, and music. But how in blazes can a really obscure and forgotten hidden gem compete against the ginormous Persona 4? I do firmly believe Growlanser is the better game, but that's just according to me, its biggest fan out there. This situation is worse than Tales of Legendia vs Xenosaga. It's impossible to pick a winner because it's the underdog versus the king of popularity. Well, I'm sticking with the underdog, probably the only guy on earth who will do that. And the best JRPG according to the consensus on PS2 is Final Fantasy X. This game. Either this or Persona 4 was gonna be the king in the consensus. Persona 4 deserves it more because I think it's the better game, but I'd say it's a close tie. They were both on so many first places or at least really high on lists. I like Final Fantasy X, I never beat it, but I enjoyed my playthrough of it. I do think it's overrated, but at least I can understand its importance and its place in the consensus. It's a great JRPG. My personal number 1 though has been the same over the past 15 years or so. Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria. Hey, I did see it on a few lists, and The Gamer had it at number 1! Holy shit, man! Well, it's yet another Square Enix game and an epic follow-up to the giant cult classic on PS1. Final Fantasy X has Tidus, a character I dislike, and his journey and relationship with Yuna feels like something I've seen 1,000 times, plainly character development like it came before and after it. Not much originality there, at least not compared to the colossal master of plot twists, Valkyrie Profile 2. It's a much more endearing and deeper story, darker, right up my alley. But it's a hard as hell JRPG with complex combat and weird equipment system. So obviously in terms of gameplay, Final Fantasy X is going to appeal to a much bigger audience. However, to develop a very risky masterpiece like Valkyrie Profile 2 and succeed, that is something historical not many people appreciate. It's definitely the better game here, no questions asked. So that's it guys, remember this video and everything I said is my opinion and my conclusions were biased as a fan, but that was the whole point of this video. Now it's your turn to share your 10 favorite JRPGs on PS2 and compare them to the general consensus. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!